Prepare for demonstration of effectiveness. You there. Stay where you are. Stand still.
Welcome to the Tin Dog Podcast. You know, it feels like an absolute age since I've done any recording, but it's only been 2 weeks. And so here I am with another Tin Dog Podcast. Now, many of you will be expecting part 2 of my Trial of a Time Lord coverage. Now, don't worry, this will still be happening. However, a couple of things have come up. First off, the Trial of a Time Lord DVD release has been put back a whole month. And secondly, to replace that release, the Doctor Who story The War Machines has been brought forward, and so today's show is going to be me talking about the War Machines. But before I do, I just want to discuss the Parsec Awards, which are the podcasting awards given out at DragonCon. That's a convention held in America for those of you who are unfamiliar. And this year, not only was I nominated, which was a massive honour, I've actually been shortlisted for one of the categories. The category that the Tin Dog Podcast is nominated for is Best Speculative Fiction Fan Podcast. Now, I've seen some of the people I'm up against, so I don't really expect to win, because you've got Galactica Quorum, The Geek Spin, The Signal, and A Different Point of View, all very strong contenders. I was rather surprised to discover I was the only Doctor Who related podcast listed, but either way I'll keep you informed as to what happens, because the awards themselves are announced later this week. One of the reasons I've not been podcasting of late is because I've been working on some writing. Now, I'm not at liberty to be able to tell you exactly what sort of project I've been working on, but I will keep you informed as soon as I can. Suffice to say, it shouldn't interfere with the podcasting too much in future. And so on with The War Machines. The War Machines itself marks an important moment in Doctor Who history. It's the first story where the Doctor is based on Earth, dealing with an Earth-based issue. In many respects, it could be seen as a forerunner to the unit stories, because the army are indeed called in at one point. More importantly, of course, it's the end of the Hartnell era. This is 3 stories before what could have been the end of the entire series as we know it completely. Hartnell was not a well man, and much has been made of his ums and ahs and his trying to remember his characterization, or at least his lines, throughout fandom. It's one of the main reasons why the series isn't shown as often as it could be, that and the fact, of course, that it's in black and white. So what's The War Machines all about? Well, set in 1966 in London, which of course becomes almost the Doctor's second home, it takes the concept very, very familiar with many, many science fiction fans of a tremendous supercomputer trying to take over the Earth and dominate mankind. Yeah, a lot of people have said it's the same plot as Terminator. Well, it is if you ignore the whole time travel aspect, which isn't seen in this story at all. The Doctor and his companion, Dodo, played by the late Jackie Lane, arrive in 1966 London. Soon after she'd apparently left, the Doctor begins to get a sensation similar to the one he has when the Daleks are around. Now, I'll come back to that specific later on. But first off, the Doctor looks up and sees the newly completed Post Office Tower. Now, for anyone outside England, the Post Office Tower is merely a large cylindrical tower block in the centre of London, but in 1966 it represented the white-hot cutting edge of technology. It was telecommunications at its best, and that's why the story is based around this very real architectural feature of London. The Post Office Tower was, of course, a communications hub for the then state-of-the-art telephone network. It was owned by the Post Office rather than British Telecom. I won't bore you with details of how the Post Office became British Telecom, but let's face it, deregulation always went down so well, with shareholders and very few other people. Oh, little bit of politics. Moving on. The Doctor and his companion lie and basically bluff their way in the way that we'll see the Doctor do time after time from this point onwards, into the control room at the top of the tower. Now, at the top of the tower there's also supposed to be a revolving restaurant. This restaurant closed in the 80s, apparently for security purposes, but whether it was or not, well, that's for a whole different conversation. At the very top of the tower, there is a tremendous supercomputer. Why can't PCs look like that these days? Machines the size of rooms, capable of very little. But that's how things were seen. At the time, there were only a handful of computers around the world used for military and large-scale business functioning. Again, even computer programmers used things like punch cards. So the idea of a computer that was so intelligent that it could think like a person was actually beyond most people. Of course, there'd been films in the 50s dealing with similar projects. Doctor Who's never been averse to looking at other people's ideas and making them their own. And so we have another example. Here, the computer is called Wotan, rather than Skynet, or Forbin. It's this machine that will be connected to all of the other major computers around the world, and this machine will govern them. And of course, as always, it'll get ideas above its station, and of course try to take over the world, for no adequately explored reason, except of course in this story the reasoning is given. It has found not mankind guilty, just mankind not being particularly good at its job. And so it takes control of people's minds and has them build little remote control versions of itself, the war machines of the title. Every machine should have its own agenda from time to time, and of course, as just a thinking machine, it needs help. Its power to hypnotise people is well known, which it seems to do over the telephone, which is all nicely thought out. It requires the Doctor's help, and it tells people that yes, you heard right. It asks for Doctor Who, not the Doctor. Now I know the Radio Times and of course the closing credits had referred to him as Doctor Who, but in the show he'd never been referred to as Doctor Who until this very point. So what does this mean to the Doctor Who fans amongst us? Well, in the Highlanders, that's a Troughton story, the Doctor does refer to himself, when taking a German alias, as Dr. Von Ware, which kind of means Doctor Who, and of course in the Underwater Menace he signs himself as Dr. W. Now, obviously, the real reasoning behind this is that the writer thought it was good, thought it was correct, and put it in. But from a fan's point of view, what else could this mean? Well, in the story Remembrance of the Daleks, which of course takes place in 1963, 3 years beforehand, Group Captain Gilmore may have left a report talking about a doctor who has no surname. And of course, as Wotan has access to all of the files, he may have written this in. That's how Wotan knows TARDIS stands for. There may be other, unseen stories where this sort of information is imparted. Some theories put forward are that Wotan could have bugged the telephone lines of Ian, Barbara, Ben, Polly or Gilmore, which would have given the name of TARDIS and their pet name of Doctor Who. I'm not fond of this theory. Of course, the Doctor, in order to fix the timeline, could have nipped back and inserted his own name into the system. There is another theory, the final one I'll put forward today, which is that the Doctor's Gallifreyan name is very long, a little like Ramana Varatnalunda, and it begins with the syllable Who. Some of this is covered, of course, in the Doctor Who Unbound story Sympathy for the Devil, which of course I'll cover another time. Back to the story. Wotan is convinced that humans are inferior, and so has his lovely plan to hypnotise people and create these little war machines, which are a little like Daleks. The reason I said I'd come back to the Daleks later on was because the same date where this story takes place is the same date as another story, of course Evil of the Daleks, which has Polly leaving. And this is of course Polly's first story, a companion so well thought out that they never even thought to give her a surname. I'm sure she's acquired one over the years via Virgin Missing Adventures, or even from Big Finish, but at the time she didn't have one. This alternative story happens at the same time, with the Daleks, so therefore the Doctor's sensation of "I think the Daleks are here" could be correct, but of course that could just be fan conjecture. Also some bloke talking nonsense as always. This is Dodo's last story. She disappears at the end of episode 2 and is hardly mentioned again. I think this isn't particularly fair on the character, who is a perfectly acceptable companion, and makes a very good point in the story The Ark. As a sideline, I'd just like to say The Ark is reviewed in a massive amount of depth in this week's Podshock. I would definitely recommend hearing it. It's a wonderfully in-depth review, and some of the theories put forward are very, very interesting. I would seek that review out. I think it's by Darth Sidious, though I could be wrong. Oh look, I've rambled. Back to the story. So, Jackie Lane leaves and is replaced by Polly. The actress who played Polly is actually on the commentary on the disc. Polly stays with Ben, who's also introduced in this story, who's a sailor, all the way through the next series and experiences the regeneration. As I said earlier, Hartnell's performance is at times patchy, but at other times marvellous. His command over what's going on, and even when he dresses up as, I'll admit it, Uncle Bulgaria from the Wombles, he still manages to pull it off really well. He kind of has the relief of the man who knows he's leaving and has accepted this and is going to give his best before he leaves. And so what does the DVD have as extras? Well, the commentary, as I've just mentioned, and also Now and Then, one of those featurettes that keep appearing on the Doctor Who discs, telling you all about the locations then and now. Of course, one of the extras that was on the VHS release was a section from Blue Peter with Valerie Singleton, talking all about the War Machines themselves, introducing them as possibly a recurring villain and that kind of thing. Blue Peter, of course, has had a long relationship with Doctor Who, and this is just another example. So that's shown, and of course there's also a visit by school children who've made their own Dalek, crashing on. Because it's such an old story, the amount of extras they could fit on this disc was fairly minimal. And one addition is the story of the post office tower itself. It's an excerpt from a TV show called One Foot in the Past, where politician and the ex-Postmaster General, Tony Benn, investigate the history of the post office tower. It's interesting, but doesn't have a huge amount to do with Doctor Who. As well as the usual suspects, photo galleries, subtitle production notes, which I just admit I love. There's some lovely PDFs, that's the War Machine designs, and of course the Radio Times listings. But the nicest sub-documentary on this is Wotan Assembly, which is the story of the relocating and reassembling of this story, because this story wasn't held in the BBC archives for as long as it could have been, and had to be gathered and reassembled from various points around the world. As I knew this story was coming out on DVD, I rewatched the VHS version I have, and many of the small moments like the TARDIS materialising, some action taking place in the streets and then cutting to an interior studio shot, I just couldn't see on the VHS version. But because the DVD's been tidied up so much and so well, you can see that jump between location and interior slightly more than would be good. There's a lot of film work on this, and it's very, very well shot. The only downside of this entire project for me is how much it feels like an Avengers episode. The complicated system of hypnosis, the computer trying to take over the world, the swinging 60s scene can't really be underestimated, where it takes place in the hottest nightclub around, the Inferno. It does have an Avengers feel, not necessarily a bad thing, and it does give the feel and general direction that the unit stories will eventually take, and so I would recommend this. Next time I'll be discussing some more of Trial of the Time Lord, but before I go, I just want to have a little bit more Who-strology. As many of you are aware, the Chinese have a system of astrology different to that of the West. They have things like Year of the Rat, and so in keeping with this, I've introduced a whole new level of Who-strology to the world. 1982, Year of the Adric. People born in the Year of the Adric always have a huge impact on the world. They are good at logic games, which could prove to be the difference between life and death. Their love of food is legendary, and life, as everyone knows it, would be very, very different if the Adrics weren't around. Sometimes, Adrics are disliked by people who should know better. Anyway, I'll leave you now, and I'll speak to you all very, very soon.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions.
Are you there, Lisa? Are you coming to see me?
Who are you?
A friend. A very old friend.
You are all here, some of the finest minds in the Empire, to lend your mental weight to a unique experiment.
Doctor, something isn't right.
That man,
He said we'd gone back in time.
This horrible place. I know I shall die here.
None of this should be here. What's happened to the world?
Giant scorpions!
Destroy them. I don't believe it.
It's him. It's really him.
I knew you'd come in the end. Doctor.
Doctor Who, the boy that time forgot.
My, you're a big girl, aren't you?
Be seeing you. You have been listening to the Tin Dog Podcast. Doctor Who and its associated shows are all trademark of the BBC. No infringement is intended. Contact us at tin-dog@hotmail.co.uk.
Test satisfactory. Effective at 30 feet.